The national budget table last week indicates government's efforts in curbing a rising debt that has become unsustainable on the sideline of a pandemic that has led to a fall in revenue combined with SACU receipts. The Treasury has resorted to cuts in allocations on operational and developmental projects, a move that a local financial expert has described as insignificant when compared to expenditure in recent years.
Cuts to government expenditure haven't been significant. We're spending 68 billion Namibian dollars in the coming financial year, and we spent 72 billion previously, but before that it was roughly 67 billion for a year or two. And if we look back to, pre sort of 2015 levels when the economy was really doing well, those expenditure ceilings were substantially lower than what they currently are. We're really spending a lot and probably not getting that much out for it. So we're raising quite a lot of debt to enable, this expenditure. So, we're spending much more than government's spending much more than what it's earning. The Ministry of Finance and government is aware of the need to implement structural reforms. So while we are concerned at the levels of debt that are going to be raised going forward, we're already at relatively unsustainable levels, especially from a debt cost perspective. Debt costs are eating into our revenues in a big way. The fact that the numbers are realistic means that there should be a willingness to do something about it.
In terms of taxes, the Minister of Finance in his recent budget speech has said that due to the challenging economic landscape, an increase in taxes is off the table. The Managing Director designate at IGG Namibia has welcomed this decision while pointing out that when it comes to taxes, Namibians pay relatively high proportions in relation to the country's gross domestic product.
If you look at tax revenue collection in relation to GDP, the Namibian government is receiving a substantial amount, even relative to much wealthier countries than we are. So as a taxpayer, I'd be very concerned should there be tax increases coming through, especially on a personal and company income tax level, because for all intents and purposes, we believe that government's actually receiving quite a lot of tax in relation to GDP in Namibia. So I'm quite happy to see that there's nothing too significant there. We do see the 10% withholding tax on dividends coming through, which has been warned about for some time, and obviously that is not ideal to implement at a time when economic recovery has not actually really gained any traction. So the country's economy is still relatively stalled.
The Minister of Finance Ipumbushimi said budgetary allocations have shifted towards health, but the cuts are part of a firm response to the high public debt.
Our revenue has declined quite significantly. Our SACU revenue has declined by about 7.5 billion. Simply because the SACU pool was not collecting enough income because of the trade disruptions, the lockdowns because of COVID-19. As a result, revenue has come down, expenditure also had to be cut. So you may have seen that expenditure was cut from 72.1 billion to about 67.9 billion. So there is a significant reduction in expenditure because we have to reduce the deficit. Otherwise, if you keep expenditure at the same level while revenue has come down, the deficit is going to be wide and it's going to be difficult to cut. So this is a time when we will have to try and live with less and make more with less, and therefore that's why there was a cut across the board. We believe almost understand that because we had no choice, but we have to try and live within our means. Health, of course, we don't have a choice. We have to keep the health of the nation as the number one priority. Otherwise, the economy will not be able to recover. We will not be able to support livelihoods and lives. We don't want to lose lives, more lives, and therefore it's important to redirect some of the expenditures to health.
The government's public debt is projected to reach 140 billion Namibian dollars, or 76% of the current GDP. Shimi estimates that this figure will likely rise to over 80% in the next 4 years. In his own words during the speech, he said that they owe it to the future generations to create a better Namibia for all. However, a report by a local daily this week quoted the minister confirming that the country has requested a $4.5 billion loan from the International Monetary Fund.